Every year, thousands of people vanish without a trace. Their stories rarely make the headlines, and their cases often gather dust. Tonight, we delve deep into 15 of those files. These are the truly perplexing missing persons cases that defy all explanation, the ones that time itself seems to have forgotten. Our first case takes us back to 1939, to the enigmatic disappearance of Barbara Newhall Follett, a child prodigy and literary star whose light dimmed prematurely, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions. Barbara was born in 1914, the daughter of literary critics, and her intellect was undeniably evident from an astonishingly young age. At just 4 years old, she was already composing poetry, and by the age of 8, she had begun writing her first novel, The House Without Windows, a whimsical tale of a young girl who escapes her home to live among nature, an extraordinary feat accomplished without formal schooling, testifying to her innate brilliance and insatiable curiosity. When The House Without Windows was published in 1927, Barbara was only 12 years old, and the book became an instant sensation, receiving widespread critical acclaim, with reviewers marveling at her imaginative prose and sophisticated storytelling, hailing her as a literary genius and comparing her to J.M. Barrie and Lewis Carroll, making her future in the literary world seem boundless. However, the pressure of such early fame can be a heavy burden, as seen when Barbara followed up with a second novel, The Voyage of the Normandie, in 1928, an account of her experiences on a schooner along the Nova Scotia coast, which was also well received. But the novelty of her age was beginning to wear off, and the public's fascination started to shift. As Barbara transitioned into young adulthood, the world around her changed dramatically, with the Great Depression casting a long shadow, impacting her family's finances and her parents' marriage, once a cornerstone of her stable, if unconventional upbringing, began to unravel, leading to their divorce in 1934, a painful event that deeply affected Barbara, ending the idyllic, free-spirited childhood she had known, replaced by the harsh realities of a struggling economy and a fractured home, where she found herself working various secretarial jobs, a far cry from the celebrated author she had been, with the creative spark that had burned so brightly in her youth seeming to flicker under the weight of mundane responsibilities and emotional turmoil. In 1932, at the age of 18, Barbara married Nickerson Rogers, and their early years together were reportedly happy, filled with a shared love for hiking and the outdoors, as they settled in Brookline, Massachusetts, and for a time, it seemed Barbara might find a new kind of contentment away from the literary spotlight. However, the marriage soon began to show cracks, as Nickerson, a quiet and reserved man, was not the intellectual equal of Barbara, whose mind was constantly seeking new challenges and deeper understanding, leading her to feel stifled, her brilliant mind yearning for stimulation that her domestic life could not provide, with the pressures of a conventional life, coupled with her husband's alleged infidelity, leading to growing resentment and unhappiness, as Barbara, who had once written of escaping to a world of nature and imagination, now found herself trapped in a reality that offered little solace. The evening of December 7th, 1939, marked the last time Barbara Newhall Follett was seen. Following a heated argument with her husband, Nickerson Rogers, she walked out of their apartment, taking with her only $30 and a small suitcase, and leaving a note, but its contents have never been publicly revealed. Nickerson later claimed she was prone to leaving after arguments and would always return. But this time she did not, and her husband waited for 2 weeks before reporting her missing to the police, a delay that would prove critical and forever shroud her disappearance in suspicion, meaning any immediate trail, any chance of finding her quickly, was lost to the passage of time. Initial police investigation was cursory, hampered by the lack of urgency and the prevailing societal attitudes of the era, where a wife leaving her husband might not have been taken with the same seriousness as other missing persons cases. For decades, Barbara's whereabouts remained a complete mystery, with her family, particularly her mother, struggling to understand what had happened. It wasn't until 1966, 27 years after her disappearance, that Barbara's mother, Helen Follett, finally pushed for a more thorough investigation, writing to the police, demanding answers, and expressing her deep concern that her daughter had met with foul play. The police, however, could find no trace of Barbara, no social security number, no driver's license, no bank accounts, no employment records under her name. It was as if she had simply ceased to exist. The chilling possibility that her fate was sealed long before anyone even started looking is a haunting thought. Did she simply choose to disappear, to shed her identity as a child prodigy and unhappy wife, to forge a new life entirely off the grid, which with only $30 would have been an extraordinary challenge, especially during the 1930s, or did something far more sinister occur? Was she met with an accident? Or worse, did she fall victim to a crime? The lack of any trace, any definitive evidence, leaves all possibilities open, and the delay in reporting her missing, coupled with the limited investigative techniques of the time, meant that crucial evidence may have been lost forever, with the silence that followed her departure having been absolute, unbroken for more than 8 decades. Barbara Newhall Follett's story is a tragic testament to the pressures of early fame and the fragility of identity. A brilliant mind, once celebrated, vanished into thin air, leaving behind a legacy of literary promise and an enduring heartbreaking mystery, a poignant reminder that sometimes, even the most extraordinary individuals can simply walk away, never to be seen or heard from again. On Tuesday, April 8, 1969, a seemingly ordinary afternoon in the quiet rural landscape of Norfolk, England, 13-year-old April Fabb vanished without a trace, leaving behind a mystery that has haunted the region for over 5 decades, and remains one of the most high-profile unsolved missing persons cases in British history. April, a bright-eyed girl with long brown hair and blue eyes, known for her love of animals and needlework, had left her home at 3 Council Houses, Metton, around 1:40 post-meridian, embarking on a short bicycle ride to her older sister's house in Rawton. A journey of approximately 2 miles, with a simple heartfelt mission, to deliver a packet of 10 players' weight cigarettes as a birthday present to her brother-in-law, along with 5.5 pence and a handkerchief, all tucked neatly into her bicycle's saddlebag. Dressed in a green jumper, a red and maroon skirt, and red shoes with wooden soles, April first stopped to chat with 2 friends at the donkey field near Harrison's farm on Cromer Road, a brief innocent interlude that lasted about 10 minutes before she continued on her way, telling them she was headed to her sister's. Just after 2 post-meridian, an employee at Harrison's farm saw April cycling along Rawton Road, Metton, in the direction of Rawton. This fleeting glimpse would tragically be the last confirmed sighting of April Fabb. The timeline of her disappearance is chillingly precise and incredibly brief. At approximately 2:15 post-meridian, a mere 15 minutes after she was last seen alive, and within a window of no more than 10 minutes from her last known location, her blue and white bicycle was discovered lying abandoned in a field, just a few hundred yards from where she had been spotted by 2 Ordnance Survey workers in a passing van. The bicycle had been thrown over a 6-foot bank on the country lane, but remarkably, the cigarettes, money, and handkerchief remained undisturbed in the saddlebag, a detail that baffled investigators and suggested a sudden swift abduction rather than a robbery. Later that afternoon, around 3 post-meridian, a local man driving his mother home also noticed the bicycle and, recognizing it as out of place, took it to the police house in Rawton, handing it over to the village constable, unaware of the tragic significance of his find. It was only later that evening, around 10 post-meridian, when April's mother, Olive Fabb, realized her daughter had never arrived at her sister's house, that the alarm was raised, and the police were called, initiating what would become one of the most extensive and painstaking missing persons investigations in Norfolk's history. The ensuing search was massive, involving 40 police officers, every police dog in the country, Royal Air Force helicopters, and hundreds of volunteers, meticulously combing the 2 to 3 mile radius around where April and her bicycle were last seen. Despite this monumental effort, which included taking nearly 2,000 statements and completing over 400 house-to-house questionnaires, no trace of April was ever found. The impossibly small window of her disappearance, just minutes on a quiet country road, suggested an opportunistic abduction, a horrifying thought in a community where such a crime was considered unthinkable. Theories abounded, from an accidental drowning to the involvement of known child murderers like Robert Black, though Black was later ruled out by cold case managers due to lack of evidence placing him in Norfolk at the time. The case drew comparisons to the later disappearance of Jeanette Tate in 1978, another young girl on a bicycle in a rural setting, but no definitive link was ever established. The discovery of April's undamaged bicycle, with her personal effects still intact, only deepened the mystery, indicating that the perpetrator's motive was not theft, but something far more sinister. 55 years later, April Fabb's fate remains unknown. Her parents, Ernest and Olive Fabb, both passed away without ever learning what happened to their youngest daughter, leaving behind a community forever changed by the unexplained vanishing of a 13-year-old girl on a bicycle, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of the unknown. The year was 1974, and the quiet town of Burlington, New Jersey, was about to be gripped by a mystery that would forever shatter its sense of security, centered around the disappearance of 13-year-old Margaret Fox, a bright and eager girl whose innocence was tragically exploited. Margaret, a typical teenager of her era, was looking forward to earning some extra money, and her excitement was palpable when she saw a newspaper advertisement for a babysitting job in the local paper. The ad, placed by a woman identifying herself only as Mrs. Davis, sought a reliable babysitter for 2 children, offering a generous $2 an hour, a substantial sum for a young girl in those times, and the prospect of a pleasant evening caring for children seemed like a perfect opportunity for Margaret to save up for something special. On the afternoon of Friday, June 24, 1974, Margaret meticulously prepared for her supposed babysitting engagement. She dressed carefully, ensuring she looked presentable, and with a sense of anticipation, she left her home, telling her mother she was headed to the bus stop to catch a bus that would take her to the address provided in the advertisement, located in a nearby affluent neighborhood. Her journey to the bus stop was uneventful, but once she arrived at the designated pickup point, Margaret Fox vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. No one witnessed her getting on a bus, no one saw her meet anyone. She simply disappeared from the face of the earth, leaving behind a bewildered and increasingly frantic family. The initial hours of her disappearance were filled with growing concern, which quickly escalated to panic as darkness fell and Margaret failed to return home, prompting her parents to contact the local police, initiating a search that would soon uncover a chilling and deeply disturbing development. Just 3 days after Margaret's disappearance, on Monday, June 27, 1974, a phone call shattered the fragile hope of the Fox family. The voice on the other end was male, cold, and calculated, and it was a ransom demand, a cruel twist that plunged the family into an abyss of psychological torment. The caller, who identified himself as the abductor, demanded a ransom of $10,000 for Margaret's safe return, instructing Margaret's father, Paul Fox, to place the money in a specific location, a white box tied with string, to be left under a tree at a designated spot in a rural area of Mount Holly, New Jersey. The chilling precision of the instructions, combined with the caller's chilling tone, left no doubt in the minds of the Fox family that their daughter was in grave danger, and they desperately wanted to comply with every demand to ensure her safe return. The police, now fully involved, advised the family to cooperate, and the ransom money was meticulously prepared, following the caller's instructions to the letter, with law enforcement strategically positioned nearby, hoping to apprehend the abductor. However, the exchange never happened. The caller never showed up to collect the money, and despite the elaborate setup and the desperate hopes of the family, the designated drop-off point remained undisturbed, a silent testament to the abductor's elusive nature and the cruel game he was playing. This was not the only call. Over the next few months, the Fox family received several more calls, each one a fresh wave of psychological torture, with the caller sometimes playing recordings of Margaret's voice, sometimes simply taunting the family with vague promises of her return, only to never follow through, meticulously avoiding any direct contact or revealing any clues that could lead to his capture. The police investigation was extensive, focusing on the newspaper advertisement and trying to trace the caller, but the elusive nature of the calls, often made from public payphones and brief in duration, made it incredibly difficult to pinpoint the perpetrator, with the technology of the 1970s not yet advanced enough to effectively trace such calls. The core of this segment lies in the pure psychological torment inflicted upon Margaret's parents, who were forced to endure the agonizing uncertainty of their daughter's fate, compounded by the cruel manipulation of the ransom calls, which offered fleeting glimmers of hope only to snatch them away, leaving behind deeper despair. The consensus among investigators and experts was that the caller likely had no intention of returning Margaret, and that the ransom demands were a sadistic form of psychological warfare, designed to inflict maximum suffering on the family, rather than a genuine attempt to extort money. To this day, the identity of Mrs. Davis, the true nature of the babysitting ad, and the fate of Margaret Fox remain unknown, leaving her family and the community of Burlington forever scarred by a case that exemplifies the exploitation of innocence and the enduring pain of an unsolved mystery. A cautionary tale of a seemingly harmless advertisement leading to an unimaginable tragedy, and a deeply disturbing ransom call that was pure psychological torment with no intention of a return. Our next heartbreaking case transports us to the vast untamed beauty of the Montana wilderness, where on a sun-drenched Tuesday, July 5, 1983, an idyllic family picnic transformed into an unimaginable nightmare with the disappearance of 4-year-old Nylene K. Marshall. The Marshall family, consisting of Nylene, her parents, and her 2 older siblings, had chosen a picturesque spot near the Blackfoot River, close to the town of Seeley Lake, for a day of outdoor enjoyment, a cherished annual tradition for the close-knit family. Nylene, a spirited and curious little girl with bright blue eyes and a mischievous smile, was wearing a pink dress and white sandals, her laughter echoing through the trees as she played with her brother and sister, gathering wildflowers and exploring the edges of their picnic blanket, a scene of perfect familial bliss. As the afternoon wore on, and the adults momentarily turned their attention to packing up the picnic basket, Nylene, who had been playing just a few yards away, seemingly vanished into thin air, a brief, innocent moment of distraction leading to a lifetime of agonizing questions. Her parents, realizing she was no longer in sight, initially called out her name, assuming she had wandered off to play a game, but as their calls went unanswered, a cold dread began to creep in, quickly escalating to frantic panic as they scoured the immediate area, their hearts pounding with growing terror. The The initial search was immediate and desperate, with family members frantically retracing their steps, shouting Eileen's name until their voices were hoarse, their minds racing through every terrifying possibility, but there was no sign of the little girl, no discarded toy, no footprint in the soft earth, nothing to indicate where she had gone, only the vast silent wilderness stretching out around them. Within hours, the local authorities were alerted, and what began as a family search quickly swelled into a massive multi-agency effort involving the Missoula County Sheriff's Department, the FBI, search and rescue teams, and hundreds of dedicated volunteers from across the state, all converging on the remote area, meticulously combing through dense forests, rugged terrain, and the banks of the swift-flowing Blackfoot River, utilizing helicopters, search dogs, and every available resource. But the sheer scale of the wilderness, with its thick underbrush, towering trees, and hidden ravines, presented an overwhelming challenge, making the search feel like looking for a needle in an immense haystack. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with the search efforts gradually winding down, leaving behind a grieving family and a community haunted by the unanswered question of what had happened to Eileen, as the initial hope that she had simply wandered off and would be found alive slowly, painfully, gave way to the grim realization that something far more sinister might have occurred. Then, precisely 1 year after Eileen's disappearance, on July 5, 1984, a horrifying anonymous phone call shattered the fragile peace the Marshall family had tried to build amidst their grief, plunging them back into the depths of despair and fear. The call received by Eileen's mother was brief, chilling, and utterly devoid of empathy. The male voice on the other end, disguised and distorted, taunted her with cruel words, hinting at knowledge of Eileen's fate, making vague references to her whereabouts, and reveling in the family's pain, claiming that Eileen was alive and well, a statement that offered a fleeting, agonizing spark of hope, only to immediately extinguish it with the caller's sadistic tone and refusal to provide any concrete proof or further details. The caller's words were carefully chosen to inflict maximum psychological torment, suggesting an intimate awareness of the family's suffering, and a deliberate intent to prolong their agony. And while the call offered no tangible clues, its very existence confirmed the terrifying possibility that Eileen's disappearance was not an accident, but rather the result of a deliberate act by a malevolent individual. Law enforcement immediately attempted to trace the call, but in 1984, such technology was rudimentary, and the caller, likely aware of this, made sure to keep the call short and from an untraceable location, leaving investigators with little more than a recording of a cruel voice and a renewed sense of urgency. The psychological profile of an individual who would torment a grieving family in such a manner points to extreme sadism, a profound lack of empathy, and a desire for power and control, often relishing the pain they inflict, and such individuals frequently seek to relive their crimes or assert their dominance over their victims' families, finding gratification in the fear and distress they cause, making the anonymous call not just a taunt, but a continuation of the initial act of violence. The call reignited the family's pain and the community's fear, transforming a quiet grief into an active, terrifying uncertainty, as the taunting words became another layer of the enduring mystery. A constant agonizing reminder that Eileen's abductor was still out there, possibly watching, still capable of inflicting pain, leaving the Marshall family to grapple not only with the loss of their beloved daughter, but also with the knowledge that a cruel individual was actively tormenting them, ensuring that the nightmare of Eileen's disappearance would never truly end. In the picturesque market town of Llangollen, nestled in the heart of Denbighshire, Wales, on a seemingly ordinary Saturday, June 16, 1990, a 68-year-old antique shop owner named Trevelyan Evans vanished without a trace, leaving behind a handwritten note that read "back in 2 minutes," a promise that would tragically remain unfulfilled for over 3 decades, transforming a bustling summer day into an enduring and baffling mystery. Trevelyan, known for her meticulous nature and her dedication to her small antique and gift shop, Attic Antiques, located on the busy Church Street, had started her day as usual, opening her shop to the stream of tourists and locals who frequented the charming Welsh town, a place where everyone knew everyone, and a sense of community pervaded every interaction, making her disappearance all the more perplexing. The morning progressed without incident. She was seen by various people, including her husband, Richard, who had left the shop around 1 post-meridian to run an errand, and a neighbor who saw her around 1:25 post-meridian, all confirming the sheer normality of the day, with no indication of any distress or unusual behavior. At approximately 1 post-meridian, Trevelyan was seen by a customer, a woman from Liverpool, who purchased a small item, and then sometime between 1 and 1:30 post-meridian, Trevelyan placed the now infamous "back in 2 minutes" sign on the door of her shop, locked it, and walked away, leaving her handbag, car keys, and coat inside, an act that, in retrospect, speaks volumes about her expectation of a quick return. This simple everyday gesture of a shopkeeper stepping out for a moment became the last confirmed action of Trevelyan Evans, and the brief window of her departure, on a busy street in broad daylight, remains one of the most perplexing aspects of her case, challenging the very notion of how someone can simply disappear without a single credible witness to their ultimate fate. The first indication that something was amiss came later that afternoon, when her husband Richard returned to the shop around 4 post-meridian, expecting to find Trevelyan there, but instead found the back in 2 minutes sign still on the door and the shop locked, an unusual occurrence given her punctuality and the fact that she had left her personal belongings inside. Initially, he assumed she had gone to their home, a short walk away, or perhaps to a nearby cafe, but as the hours passed and she failed to appear, a growing sense of unease began to settle in, escalating to alarm by the evening when she still had not returned. The alarm was raised, and a massive search operation was immediately launched, involving local police, mountain rescue teams, and hundreds of volunteers, meticulously combing the town of Llangollen and the surrounding rural areas, including the River Dee. But despite the extensive efforts, no trace of Trevelyan, nor any definitive clue as to her whereabouts, was ever found, leaving investigators with a frustrating void of information. The police investigation focused heavily on the timeline of her disappearance, attempting to piece together her movements after she left the shop. While there were several unconfirmed sightings in the immediate aftermath, including one report of her walking towards the town's bus station and another of her getting into a red vehicle, none of these leads ever materialized into concrete evidence, further deepening the mystery and making it nearly impossible to establish a definitive path she might have taken. The lack of any struggle, any signs of foul play at the shop, or any indication of her intention to leave permanently, coupled with the fact that she left her essential personal items behind, strongly suggested that her disappearance was sudden and unplanned, pointing towards an opportunistic abduction or an unexpected unforeseen event that led to her vanishing. The case has been reviewed multiple times over the decades, with various theories put forward, ranging from her having met with an accident, to her having been abducted by someone she knew or a stranger, or even the possibility that she deliberately walked away to start a new life, though the latter seems highly improbable given her age, her attachments, and the circumstances of her departure. The sheer normality of the day, the bustling street, and the simple, seemingly innocuous act of placing a back in 2 minutes sign on her shop door, only to vanish into thin air, remains the most haunting aspect of Trevelyan Evans' disappearance. A stark reminder that even in broad daylight, in a well-populated area, a person can inexplicably disappear, leaving behind nothing but questions and a chilling void, a testament to the fact that sometimes, despite all efforts, a human being can simply cease to exist, leaving family, friends, and investigators forever grappling with the inexplicable and the enduring agony of not knowing. Diane Auget, a 47-year-old woman from Odessa, Florida, vanished on a Friday, October 9, 1998, under circumstances so profoundly bizarre and disjointed that her case remains one of the most perplexing and unsettling disappearances in recent American history. A macabre trail of clues that, rather than illuminating her fate, only deepened the impenetrable mystery. Diane, who had a documented history of mental illness, including bipolar disorder, was known to sometimes wander, but never for extended periods, and she always maintained contact with her family, making her sudden and complete disappearance particularly alarming. On the day she was last seen, Diane had been at her mother's home in Odessa, and after an argument she left on foot, reportedly heading towards a nearby convenience store, a seemingly mundane act that would soon unravel into a series of inexplicable events, each more baffling than the last. Her family, accustomed to her occasional brief absences, initially waited, but as days turned into a week with no word from Diane, they grew increasingly concerned and reported her missing to the Pasco County Sheriff's Office, initiating an investigation that would quickly descend into a labyrinth of nonsensical and disturbing discoveries. The first truly bizarre clue emerged just 2 days after her disappearance. On Sunday, October 11, 1998, when a small severed fingertip, later confirmed through forensic analysis to belong to Diane Auget, was discovered floating in the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Tarpon Springs, approximately 25 miles from where she was last seen. The discovery of a single digit, with no other body parts found despite extensive searches of the coastline and surrounding waters, immediately raised chilling questions. Was this a message, a warning, or a horrific accident? The clean cut of the fingertip suggested it had been severed deliberately, adding a layer of premeditation to the already grim scenario, and the sheer improbability of finding such a small, isolated piece of evidence in the vast expanse of the ocean only compounded the mystery, leaving investigators to grapple with the unsettling implications of such a gruesome find. As if the severed fingertip wasn't enough to confound investigators, The case took an even stranger turn when, in the weeks following her disappearance, Diane's family began receiving a series of cryptic and disturbing phone calls. The calls were particularly unsettling because they originated from Diane's own landline telephone number, a number that should have been inactive since she was missing. The calls were brief, often silent, or contained garbled, indistinguishable sounds, sometimes punctuated by what sounded like muffled screams or distorted voices, adding a terrifying, almost supernatural element to the unfolding drama. The police were unable to trace the calls effectively, as they were often too short, or seemed to be routed in a way that defied conventional tracking methods of the era, leading to speculation that the calls might have been pre-recorded, or perhaps even made by someone with intimate knowledge of telephone systems, further deepening the sense of unease and the feeling that they were dealing with a perpetrator who was deliberately toying with the family and law enforcement. The final, and perhaps most inexplicable, piece of the puzzle emerged several weeks later when a neatly folded pile of Diane's clothes, including her jeans, shirt, and underwear, was discovered inside a freezer at a convenience store located in the town of Lake Panisovki, approximately 60 miles north of Odessa. The clothes were meticulously arranged, almost as if placed there with care, and the location itself seemed utterly random, disconnected from any other known activity or sighting of Diane. The discovery of her clothing, intact and seemingly untouched by the elements or any struggle, in such an unusual and remote location, defied all logical explanation, presenting a stark contrast to the violent implication of the severed fingertip and the psychological torment of the phone calls. Why would someone place her clothes in a freezer? Was it an attempt to preserve evidence, or another bizarre symbolic message from her abductor? The disparate nature of these clues, a severed fingertip in the ocean, taunting phone calls from her own inactive number, and neatly folded clothes in a distant convenience store freezer, created a narrative that simply refused to coalesce into a coherent story, leaving investigators with a collection of puzzle pieces that, when put together, form no recognizable picture, only a terrifying tableau of the inexplicable. Diane Oggett's case remains unsolved, a chilling testament to a crime that makes no sense, where every clue, rather than bringing clarity, only serves to deepen the profound and unsettling mystery of her disappearance, leaving her family and the community forever haunted by the bizarre and unsettling trail of clues that point everywhere and nowhere all at once. The year 1999 brought forth a bewildering mystery from the seemingly secure confines of a university dormitory when 19-year-old Michael Negrete, a bright and promising freshman at the University of California, Berkeley, vanished without a trace from his locked room in Unit 1, a disappearance so baffling it has since been dubbed a locked room mystery by investigators and true crime enthusiasts alike. Michael, a computer science major known for his intelligence and quiet demeanor, had spent the evening of Friday, December 10th, 1999, immersed in a late-night video game session with his roommate and friends. A typical Friday night for a college student, filled with the camaraderie and digital adventures that defined the era. The group played into the early morning hours, finally calling it a night sometime between 3 and 4 post-meridian on Saturday, December 11th, with Michael heading back to his own room, which he shared with another student who was away for the weekend, leaving him alone in the double occupancy space. The last confirmed sighting of Michael was by his friends as he walked back to his dorm room, a short, uneventful journey across the well-lit campus, and everything appeared normal, with no indications of distress or any unusual encounters. When his roommate returned to the dorm on Sunday, December 12th, he found Michael's room locked from the inside, a detail that immediately raised questions, as it implied Michael was either still inside or had somehow locked it upon leaving, a seemingly impossible feat given the internal lock mechanism. Upon entering the room, the roommate discovered Michael's bed undisturbed. His wallet, identification, backpack, and all his personal belongings, including his shoes and keys, were still in the room, neatly arranged as if he had simply stepped out for a moment, intending to return. But Michael himself was nowhere to be found. The absence of his shoes was particularly perplexing, as it suggested he had left the building barefoot, an unlikely scenario for a December morning, even in California, and the fact that his keys were left behind meant he could not have locked the door from the outside, further cementing the locked room aspect of the mystery. The alarm was raised, and campus police, followed by the Berkeley Police Department, launched an immediate and extensive investigation, treating Michael's disappearance with the utmost seriousness due to the unusual circumstances. The initial search focused intensely on the dorm building itself, meticulously examining every floor, every room, and every common area, searching for any sign of Michael or any clue that could shed light on his whereabouts, but the secure, multi-story building yielded no answers, no hidden passages, no overlooked corners. The investigation quickly expanded to encompass the entire university campus, with police officers. K-9 units, and hundreds of volunteers systematically combing every inch of the sprawling grounds, including academic buildings, libraries, recreational facilities, and the surrounding residential areas. But despite the monumental effort, no trace of Michael was ever found, and there was a baffling lack of any evidence that he had ever left the building through any conventional means. The campus security footage, which covered all entrances and exits of the dorm and surrounding areas, was reviewed painstakingly, frame by frame, by multiple investigators. But Michael Negrete was not seen entering or exiting the building at any point after his friends last saw him, nor was he captured on any other campus cameras, a fact that defied logic and intensified the erased aspect of his disappearance. The lack of any forced entry into his room, the intact personal belongings, the absence of his shoes and keys, and the complete void of any credible sightings or forensic evidence outside the dorm created a truly impenetrable puzzle, leading investigators to consider every conceivable, no matter how improbable, theory from a deliberate, meticulously planned disappearance to an abduction by someone who bypassed all security, or even the possibility of an accident within the building that left no trace. The baffling lack of any evidence that he ever left the building, combined with the secure nature of the dorm and the thoroughness of the search, left investigators with a profound sense of frustration, as if Michael had simply dematerialized within the confines of his own room, leaving behind only an unsettling silence and a myriad of unanswered questions. To this day, Michael Negrete's fate remains unknown, a haunting testament to a case where a young man seemingly vanished from a locked room, leaving behind a chilling void and a mystery that continues to defy all logical explanation. A stark reminder that sometimes, even in the most secure environments, a person can simply be erased. On a crisp Friday morning, April 15, 2005, the esteemed district attorney of Center County, Pennsylvania, Ray Grikar, a powerful man with a distinguished career spanning 2 decades, embarked on a seemingly innocuous drive that would lead him into an abyss of mystery, leaving behind a trail of perplexing clues and a profound sense of bewilderment that continues to haunt his family, colleagues, and the entire state. Grikar, known for his meticulous nature, his sharp legal mind, and his unwavering commitment to justice, had a reputation for handling high-profile cases with a quiet intensity, and his impending retirement, just months away, was meant to usher in a new chapter of relaxation and well-deserved respite, making his sudden disappearance all the more unfathomable. That morning, Grikar called his girlfriend, Patty Funicola, at 11:30 post-meridian, informing her that he was going for a drive along Route 192 in Union County, a scenic route he often enjoyed, and he assured her he would be home for dinner, a casual conversation that would be the last time anyone close to him would hear his voice. He was seen by various witnesses throughout the early afternoon, including a brief stop at an antique store in Lewisburg, approximately an hour's drive from his home in Bellefonte, and another sighting at a market, all confirming his presence and seemingly normal demeanor, with no indication of distress or any unusual activity, just a man enjoying a drive on a pleasant spring day. However, as evening approached and Grikar failed to return home, a growing unease settled over Funicola, which quickly escalated to alarm when she couldn't reach him on his cell phone, prompting her to contact the authorities, initiating a search that would soon uncover the first, and most crucial, piece of the puzzle. The following day, Grikar's red and white Mini Cooper was discovered abandoned in the parking lot of the antique store in Lewisburg, where he had been seen the previous day, a location far from his intended route home, and a place where he had no apparent reason to linger, immediately raising suspicions of foul play. Inside the car, investigators found his cell phone, which showed no outgoing calls after his conversation with Funicola, and his laptop computer, both seemingly intact, yet their presence only deepened the mystery, as it seemed uncharacteristic for Grikar to leave such important personal items unattended, especially his work laptop, which contained sensitive information related to his prosecutorial duties. The discovery of the abandoned vehicle and the personal items sparked an intensive investigation involving multiple law enforcement agencies, including the Pennsylvania State Police and the FBI, who meticulously processed the scene, interviewed countless witnesses, and launched extensive ground and aerial searches of the surrounding rural areas, including the Susquehanna River. But despite the monumental effort, no trace of Ray Grikar himself was ever found, leaving investigators with a frustrating void of information. The main focus of the investigation soon shifted to the laptop and its contents, as it was believed that the computer held the key to understanding Grikar's disappearance. However, when forensic experts attempted to retrieve data from the laptop's hard drive, they encountered a significant and deeply disturbing obstacle. The hard drive had been deliberately removed, and its casing was found to be severely damaged, rendering any data recovery impossible. This deliberate destruction of the hard drive was a clear and unequivocal sign that someone, whether Grikar himself or another party, wanted to erase his secrets, to obliterate any digital footprint that might lead to answers, transforming the case from a missing person investigation into a potential criminal inquiry, with the chilling implication that a powerful man's past had indeed caught up to him. The destruction of the laptop's hard drive immediately fueled speculation that Ricar's disappearance was connected to one of his many high-profile cases. Perhaps a cold case that he had recently reopened, or a sensitive investigation that put him in conflict with dangerous individuals, and the possibility that he had uncovered something so explosive that someone felt compelled to silence him permanently became a central, terrifying theory. The alternative theory that Ricard himself deliberately destroyed the hard drive and orchestrated his own disappearance, perhaps to escape a personal crisis or to start a new life, also gained traction, but seemed to contradict his established character and his close ties to his family and community. Yet the meticulous nature of the hard drive's destruction suggested a level of premeditation that could fit either scenario. The baffling lack of any other forensic evidence, the absence of a body, and the conflicting interpretations of the clues left investigators and the public in a perpetual state of uncertainty, forever grappling with the question of whether Ray Ricard was a victim of foul play, or if he chose to vanish, erasing his past in the process. To this day, Ray Ricard's fate remains one of Pennsylvania's most enduring mysteries, a chilling testament to how even a man of power and influence can simply drive away and disappear, leaving behind only the haunting specter of deliberately erased secrets and the agonizing unanswered question of what truly happened to the prosecutor who drove away. The perplexing disappearance of 30-year-old Stephen Kocher, a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints from St. George, Utah, on Friday, December 13th, 2009, is a case uniquely defined by its digital footprint, a series of security camera sightings that meticulously trace his strange and seemingly aimless journey across multiple states, only to culminate in his inexplicable vanishing from the frame of a suburban surveillance system, leaving behind a chilling void and a profound sense of confusion surrounding his motives. Stephen, a man known for his quiet nature, his strong work ethic, and his deep religious faith, had recently moved back in with his parents in St. George after a period of living independently, and while he was actively seeking employment, there was no indication of any personal distress or financial hardship that would suggest a voluntary disappearance, making his actions all the more baffling to his family and investigators. The narrative of Stephen's last known movements begins not with a witness account, but with a meticulously reconstructed timeline derived almost entirely from automated systems, ATM withdrawals, cell phone pings, and, most crucially, security camera footage from various businesses and public spaces, painting a picture of a man on a solitary cross-country trek that defied any logical explanation. On the morning of December 13th, Stephen left his home in St. George, telling his family he was going to meet a friend, but instead, he began driving north, a journey that would take him hundreds of miles away from his stated destination and his familiar surroundings, initiating a sequence of events that would become increasingly bizarre. Over the next 2 days, Stephen's car, a black Chevrolet Cavalier, was captured on numerous security cameras, traversing through Nevada and into California, his movements characterized by long stretches of driving interspersed with brief stops, often at gas stations or convenience stores, where he would purchase small items, always alone, always seemingly calm, and never interacting with anyone in a way that suggested distress or urgency. His cell phone, which was active during this period, pinged off various towers, confirming his trajectory, but all attempts to contact him went unanswered, and the messages he sent to family and friends were vague and non-committal, offering no clear explanation for his travels, further deepening the mystery of his purpose. The climax of this digital odyssey, and the final piece of factual evidence in Stephen's case, occurred on the afternoon of Sunday, December 15th, 2009, in the quiet residential neighborhood of Sun City Anthem in Henderson, Nevada, a master-planned community approximately 20 miles southeast of Las Vegas, a place where Stephen had no known connections, no friends, no family, and no apparent reason to be. At approximately 3 post-meridian, Stephen's black Cavalier was captured on a residential security camera, pulling into a cul-de-sac, parking, and then moments later, Stephen himself was seen walking out of the frame, disappearing down a suburban street, carrying what appeared to be a folder or a portfolio, a seemingly ordinary act that, in retrospect, became the precise moment he vanished from the known world. The footage, grainy and silent, shows him walking purposefully, yet without any discernible destination, into a neighborhood where he was a complete stranger, a ghost in the machine, captured for a fleeting moment before dissolving into the anonymity of suburbia, never to be seen or heard from again. The baffling nature of this final sighting, coupled with the absence of any further cell phone activity, ATM withdrawals, or credit card usage, strongly suggested that Stephen's disappearance was not a random act of violence, but rather a deliberate, albeit inexplicable, decision on his part, or perhaps the result of an encounter with someone he met in that unknown neighborhood. The subsequent search efforts were extensive, involving law enforcement, search and rescue teams, and hundreds of volunteers meticulously combing the vast desert landscape surrounding Henderson. But despite the monumental effort, no trace of Stephen, his car, or any personal belongings was ever found, leaving investigators with nothing but the haunting security camera footage and a myriad of unanswered questions about his motives and his ultimate fate. The case of Stephen Kutcher remains an open wound for his family and a source of enduring fascination for those who study missing persons cases. A chilling reminder of how easily a person can disappear in the digital age, leaving behind a meticulously documented journey that ends abruptly, inexplicably, with a man walking out of frame and into the unknown, a ghost in the security camera, forever lost to the silent, watchful eyes of technology. The night of May 14th, 2008, began as a celebration for 19-year-old Brandon Swanson, a college student from Canby, Minnesota, who was returning home from a party with friends in Marshall. A journey that should have been a routine 45-minute drive, but instead devolved into an audio-focused nightmare, a harrowing 47-minute phone call that would forever etch itself into the minds of his parents and become the last, terrifying record of his existence, leaving behind a chilling mystery defined by a sudden, desperate cry and an abrupt, permanent silence. Brandon, a responsible and level-headed young man, had called his parents, Brian and Annette Swanson, just after midnight, around 2:30 post-meridian, to inform them that he had driven his car into a ditch on a gravel road and needed a ride home, a common enough occurrence on the rural, unlit roads of southwestern Minnesota, and his parents, relieved that he was unharmed, immediately set out to pick him up, initiating a search that would become a frantic, agonizing ordeal. During this initial call, Brandon described his location to his father, Brian, stating he was near a small town called Lind, and that he could see lights from the town, giving his parents a seemingly clear direction to follow. However, as Brian and Annette drove along the gravel roads, meticulously searching for their son's car, they were unable to locate him or his vehicle, despite following his directions and repeatedly calling his cell phone, which remained connected, providing a continuous, albeit disorienting, audio link to their son. The phone call, which would ultimately last for 47 excruciating minutes, became a real-time chronicle of their escalating panic and Brandon's growing confusion, as he tried to guide them, his voice initially calm, then increasingly frustrated, and finally tinged with fear as the realization dawned on him that he was not where he thought he was, and that the familiar landscape had somehow become alien and treacherous. As the minutes ticked by, Brandon and his parents remained on the phone, their conversation a desperate attempt to triangulate his position, with Brandon describing landmarks he could see or hear: the sound of a river, the rustling of cornfields, the distant lights that seemed to shift and disappear, while his parents drove back and forth, their headlights cutting through the inky blackness of the rural night, their voices growing more strained with each passing moment of fruitless searching. The tension built relentlessly, a palpable weight in the darkness, as Brian and Annette's initial relief morphed into profound anxiety, then into a gnawing terror, as their son's voice, their only connection to him, conveyed an increasing sense of disorientation and vulnerability. The sounds of the night, once benign, now imbued with an ominous quality, amplifying their fear. The core of this audio-focused nightmare, the moment that forever haunts his family, occurred approximately 47 minutes into the call, when Brandon, who had been walking along what he believed was a riverbank, suddenly exclaimed, with a terrified guttural cry that pierced through the phone line, "Oh shit!" followed by an immediate chilling silence, the line going dead, severing the last thread of communication, leaving his parents in a state of shock and utter disbelief, stranded in the dark, with only the echo of his final, desperate utterance. The suddenness of the exclamation, the raw, unadulterated fear in his voice, and the abrupt termination of the call suggested an immediate, unforeseen, and potentially catastrophic event, an encounter or an accident that happened in an instant, leaving no time for further words, no explanation, only that single, terrifying cry. The next morning, a massive search effort was launched, involving law enforcement, K-9 units, and hundreds of volunteers, meticulously combing the area where Brandon's car was eventually found, abandoned in a ditch, and the surrounding fields, rivers, and wooded areas. But despite the monumental effort, no trace of Brandon Swanson, nor any further clues as to what caused his final terrified cry, was ever discovered, leaving his car as the only tangible evidence of his presence. The discrepancy between Brandon's initial belief that he was near Lind and the actual location of his car, which was found several miles away near Taunton, along a different stretch of gravel road, suggested a profound disorientation, perhaps exacerbated by the darkness and the stress of the situation, making the search even more challenging. The sound of a river, which Brandon mentioned, led searchers to focus on the Yellow Medicine River, but the vastness of the rural landscape, combined with the lack of specific coordinates from the phone call, made pinpointing his exact location an almost impossible task. The case of Brandon Swanson remains one of Minnesota's most enduring and heartbreaking mysteries, a chilling testament to how a routine drive can transform into an inexplicable disappearance, leaving behind only the permanent audio record of a son's final terrified moment, a desperate cry in the darkness, and an agonizing unanswered question that continues to haunt his family and the community, forever wondering what transpired in those final seconds, after that single chilling "oh shit." The disappearance of 19-year-old Jesse Ross, a bright and promising college student from Kansas City, Missouri, on Sunday, November 26, 2006, from a mock United Nations conference in Chicago, Illinois, remains one of the most unsettling and perplexing cases in recent memory. A vanishing act from a crowded yet disorienting environment that left behind only a single mysterious thump and a profound void, baffling investigators and his family for nearly 2 decades. Jesse, a student at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, was attending the American Model United Nations Conference at the Sheraton Chicago Hotel and Towers, a prestigious event that brought together hundreds of students from across the country, all immersed in a world of international diplomacy, debate, and social interaction, an environment that, while stimulating, could also be overwhelming and disorienting, especially for a young man from a smaller city. The conference, held in a sprawling hotel with multiple ballrooms, meeting rooms, and public spaces, was a hive of activity, with students moving between sessions, social events, and informal gatherings, creating a constant flux of people that, ironically, made it easier for someone to disappear unnoticed amidst the organized chaos. On the evening of his disappearance, Jesse was with a group of friends attending a late-night session, and at approximately 2 post-meridian on Sunday, November 26th, he informed his friends that he was going back to his room to rest, a seemingly innocuous decision that would mark the last time he was seen by anyone he knew. He left his friends in the ballroom, walked out into the busy hotel lobby, and was captured on a security camera briefly walking towards the elevators, a fleeting image that shows him alone, appearing calm, and carrying nothing but the clothes on his back, a snapshot of a young man on the cusp of an inexplicable vanishing. However, Jesse never made it back to his room, nor did he contact his friends or family again, and when he failed to appear for the next morning's sessions, his friends became concerned and reported him missing, initiating a search that would quickly descend into a labyrinth of unanswered questions and unsettling possibilities. The initial investigation focused on the hotel itself, with police meticulously reviewing security footage from every camera, interviewing staff and conference attendees, and systematically searching every floor, every room, and every hidden corner of the massive building. But despite the exhaustive efforts, no further visual trace of Jesse was ever found, as if he had simply dissolved into the bustling environment of the hotel, a ghost in the machine of surveillance. The disorienting nature of the mock UN conference, with its late-night sessions, social events, and the constant flow of people, added a layer of complexity to the investigation, making it difficult to establish a clear timeline or identify potential witnesses who might have seen something unusual amidst the general hubbub. The sheer size and layout of the Sheraton Chicago Hotel and Towers, with its multiple exits, stairwells, and service areas, also presented a significant challenge, offering numerous avenues for a person to leave without being noticed, or for someone to be taken without a struggle being observed. However, the most compelling and unsettling piece of evidence in Jesse's disappearance emerged from an unexpected source: a nearby audio sensor. Located in the service area of the hotel, which recorded a mysterious thump sound at approximately 3:30 post-meridian, roughly an hour and a half after Jesse was last seen on security footage. The sound, described by forensic audio experts as a heavy, dull impact, was isolated and distinct, yet its origin and significance remained shrouded in ambiguity, sparking intense debate and speculation among investigators and the public. Was it the sound of an accidental fall? Perhaps Jesse tripping and hitting his head in a secluded area of the hotel, a tragic accident that no one witnessed? Or was it something far more sinister, the sound of an abduction, a struggle, a body being moved, or perhaps even a fatal blow, all occurring in a blind spot, hidden from the watchful eyes of security cameras and the bustling crowds of the conference? The theory that the thump could be the sound of an abduction gained traction due to the complete lack of any other evidence of Jesse's departure or any signs of a struggle in public areas, suggesting that if foul play was involved, it was meticulously executed and concealed. The possibility of an accident, while plausible, also presented its own set of questions. If Jesse had an accident, where was his body? Why was it never found despite extensive searches? The absence of any further clues, combined with the chilling ambiguity of the thump, created a narrative that simply refused to coalesce into a coherent explanation, leaving investigators with a collection of puzzle pieces that, when put together, form no recognizable picture, only a terrifying tableau of the inexplicable. To this day, Jesse Ross's fate remains unknown, a haunting testament to a vanishing act from a crowded conference where a single mysterious thump is the only tangible clue, a chilling reminder that sometimes, even in plain sight, a person can simply walk out of a room and disappear, leaving behind only an unsettling silence and a profound enduring mystery. The baffling disappearance of 21-year-old Jason Landry, a promising student at Texas State University, on the night of Sunday, December 13th, 2020, is a case uniquely characterized by a perplexing trail of evidence that begins with a single-car crash on a dark rural road and culminates in the discovery of his scattered personal clothing nearly a mile away. A bizarre and unsettling tableau that has left investigators and his family grappling with a myriad of theories, from the physiological effects of hypothermia to the chilling possibility of foul play. Jason, a bright and well-liked young man from Missouri City, Texas, was on his way home to his parents for the Christmas break, a familiar drive he had made countless times, and there was no indication of any personal distress, mental health issues, or substance abuse that would explain the strange events that unfolded, making his vanishing all the more inexplicable and heartbreaking as his journey began like any other, a long but routine drive from San Marcos to Missouri City, but somewhere along the way, in the desolate stretches of Caldwell County, the narrative took a sharp and inexplicable turn into the realm of the unknown, leaving behind a series of clues that defy conventional explanation. The initial piece of the puzzle emerged at approximately 11 post-meridian on December 13th, when Jason's Nissan Altima was discovered wrecked on a remote unlit dirt road, Salt Flat Road, near Luling, Texas, a location far off his usual route home. The car had sustained significant damage, indicating a single vehicle accident, but Jason was nowhere to be found, and there was no immediate sign of him at the crash site, prompting a swift response from local law enforcement, with the car's lights on, the keys in the ignition, and his wallet, cell phone, and laptop all found inside, seemingly untouched, suggesting that Jason had left the scene abruptly and without taking any of his essential belongings, a detail that immediately raised red flags for investigators. The discovery of the abandoned vehicle, coupled with the absence of its driver, initiated an intensive search of the immediate area, but it was the subsequent more disturbing discovery that truly deepened the mystery and set Jason Landry's case apart from typical missing persons investigations, as the following day, nearly a mile away from the crash site, along the same Salt Flat Road, searchers made a series of increasingly bizarre and unsettling discoveries. A scattered trail of Jason's personal clothing, with his backpack, containing his gaming computer, found near the crash site, but further down the road, his shirt, shorts, socks, and underwear were found strewn across the desolate landscape, as if he had deliberately stripped them off and discarded them as he walked. This perplexing evidence trail, culminating in the discovery of his naked body, or at least the absence of any clothing, immediately brought forth two primary, yet starkly contrasting, theories to explain Jason's actions and ultimate disappearance. The first, and perhaps most medically plausible, theory centers around paradoxical undressing, a phenomenon observed in cases of severe hypothermia, where as the body's core temperature drops dangerously low, the brain can malfunction, leading to a sensation of extreme heat, causing individuals to shed their clothing, often in a frantic and disoriented state, despite being in freezing conditions, given that the night of December 13th was cold, with temperatures dropping into the low 40s, and Jason was likely disoriented from the car crash. This physiological response could explain why he would strip off his clothes and wander into the wilderness, succumbing to the elements, thus suggesting a tragic accident, a young man lost and confused, falling victim to the unforgiving forces of nature, his actions a desperate, involuntary response to a failing body. However, the second, and far more sinister, theory posits that Jason's scattered clothing is evidence of foul play, where the deliberate removal and scattering of his clothes, particularly his underwear, could be interpreted as an attempt to stage the scene, to mislead investigators into believing he was a victim of hypothermia, while in reality, he was abducted, attacked, or even murdered. The remote location of the crash, the darkness of the night, and the absence of any witnesses create a perfect scenario for a perpetrator to act with impunity, and the lack of any further trace of Jason, despite extensive searches involving hundreds of volunteers, drones, and K-9 units, fuels the suspicion that he may have been taken from the area, thus suggesting a more deliberate and malicious act, where the scattered clothing is not a symptom of his own distress, but rather a calculated move by another party to obscure the true nature of his disappearance. The lack of any definitive answers, the conflicting interpretations of the evidence, and the agonizing silence that has followed Jason's vanishing have left his family and the community in a perpetual state of limbo, forever haunted by the image of his abandoned car and the chilling trail of his discarded clothes, leaving the question of whether he was a victim of a tragic accident, lost to the elements in the cruel deception of hypothermia, or if he encountered something, or someone, far more sinister on that dark Texas road. To this day, Jason Landry's fate remains unknown, a haunting testament to a case where the most baffling evidence, the clothes in the road, offers no clear answers, only a profound and enduring mystery. The serene morning of Saturday, July 11th, 2015, in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, was shattered by the inexplicable disappearance of 57-year-old Thelma Kroll, a beloved grandmother and devoted family woman whose routine morning walk along a scenic trail transformed into a chilling tableau of violence and abduction, leaving behind a stark contrast between the perceived safety of her familiar surroundings and the terrifying reality of a predator striking in broad daylight, forever altering the sense of security in her community and plunging her family into an agonizing unanswered nightmare. Thelma, known for her vibrant spirit, her dedication to her grandchildren, and her active lifestyle, had embarked on her customary hike, a cherished ritual that often took her through the picturesque trails near her home, a path she knew intimately and on which she felt completely safe, a place where the sounds of nature and the occasional greeting from fellow walkers were the only expected encounters. She was last seen by her husband, Robert, at approximately 7 post-meridian, as she left their home, dressed in her hiking attire, carrying her cell phone, and wearing her glasses, ready for the invigorating exercise that started her day. A seemingly ordinary departure that would soon become the last confirmed sighting of her, marking the beginning of an intensive search and a profound mystery that continues to haunt her loved ones. The initial hours of her absence were filled with growing concern, which quickly escalated to alarm when she failed to return home by her usual time, prompting her family to contact the authorities, initiating a search that would soon uncover the first, and most crucial, pieces of evidence, grim indicators that something far more sinister than a simple mishap had occurred. The most compelling and disturbing evidence was discovered by searchers along the path she was known to frequent. Her glasses, broken and lying on the ground, and her cell phone, also found discarded nearby, both items clearly indicating a struggle, a sudden violent confrontation that had taken place on what was once considered a tranquil and safe public space, immediately dispelling any notions of a voluntary disappearance or a simple accident. The discovery of these personal effects, particularly the broken glasses, which Thelma relied on for her vision, painted a vivid and terrifying picture for investigators. A woman unexpectedly attacked, her attempts to resist resulting in the loss and damage of her essential belongings, a clear and unambiguous sign that she had not left willingly, but had been forcibly removed from the trail. Based on the evidence of the struggle, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, quickly declared Thelma Kroll's disappearance an abduction, a pronouncement that sent shockwaves through the community and initiated a massive multi-agency investigation involving extensive ground searches, aerial surveillance, and a meticulous forensic examination of the scene, all aimed at finding any further trace of Thelma or identifying her assailant. The police certainty that she was abducted was further solidified by the lack of any other plausible explanation for her sudden and complete vanishing, as Thelma had no known enemies, no financial troubles, and no history of mental health issues that would suggest she would abandon her beloved family, thus reinforcing the grim conclusion that she was a victim of a violent crime, snatched from her routine by an unknown assailant. As the investigation progressed, the RCMP released a composite sketch of a person of interest, a man seen in the vicinity of the abduction around the time Thelma disappeared, described as an indigenous male, approximately 5 feet 8 inches tall, with a stocky build and a dark complexion. A crucial lead that, despite widespread publicity, did not immediately lead to an arrest, leaving the community in a heightened state of fear and uncertainty as the perpetrator remained at large. The chilling reality of a predator striking in a public park, a place where families and individuals sought solace and exercise, cast a long shadow over Winnipeg, forcing residents to reevaluate their sense of personal safety and highlighting the vulnerability of even the most routine activities. The case of Thelma Kroll became a stark reminder that danger can lurk anywhere, even in the most unexpected and seemingly secure environments, and that the illusion of safety can be shattered in an instant, leaving behind only the cold, hard facts of a struggle, a broken pair of glasses, a discarded phone, and the agonizing, unanswered question of what truly happened to the grandmother who went for a hike and never returned. To this day, Thelma Kroll's body has never been found, and her abductor remains unidentified, leaving her family with an enduring grief and a desperate plea for answers, a testament to a crime that snatched a vibrant life from a peaceful morning, leaving behind only the haunting specter of violence and the profound, enduring mystery of her fate. The seemingly unremarkable evening of Friday, October 10th, 2008, in Lafayette, Louisiana, marked the inexplicable vanishing of 26-year-old A.J. Bro, a hardworking, devoted family man whose life, by all accounts, was stable and fulfilling, only to be abruptly interrupted by a mundane stop at a gas station, leaving behind his car, all his personal effects, and a profound, enduring mystery that has baffled investigators and his loved ones for over a decade. A chilling testament to how a person can simply cease to exist without a trace, without a motive, and without a single discernible reason. AJ, known for his strong work ethic, his commitment to his family, and his quiet, unassuming nature, was on his way home from his job as an electrician, a routine commute he had made countless times. And there was absolutely no indication of any personal distress, financial troubles, marital problems, or any other life upheaval that would suggest a voluntary disappearance, making his sudden vanishing all the more perplexing and heartbreaking for his wife, Christy, and their young son. The narrative of AJ's last known movements begins and ends with the mundane, captured in the grainy, silent footage of a gas station's closed-circuit television (CCTV) system, a digital record that meticulously documents his final moments in the public eye, yet offers no explanation for his subsequent disappearance. At approximately 7 post-meridian, AJ pulled his silver Ford F-150 pickup truck into a local gas station, a familiar stop on his route home, and the CCTV footage shows him calmly exiting his vehicle, entering the convenience store, purchasing a soda, and then returning to his truck. A perfectly normal transaction, a snapshot of an ordinary man on an ordinary day, utterly devoid of any suspicious activity or unusual interactions. He appears relaxed, unhurried, and completely at ease, his demeanor offering no hint of the impending, inexplicable event that would forever alter the course of his family's lives. And as he drove away from the gas station, the camera captured his truck turning onto the main road, a final fleeting image before he vanished into the anonymity of the evening. A ghost in the machine of surveillance, leaving behind only the cold, hard facts of his last recorded movements. However, AJ never made it home, and when he failed to arrive, his worried wife, Christy, contacted the authorities, initiating a search that would quickly uncover the first, and most crucial, piece of the puzzle: his abandoned truck. His silver Ford F-150 was discovered later that night, parked on the side of a rural road, approximately a mile and a half from the gas station, an area that was not on his direct route home, immediately raising red flags for investigators. The discovery of the truck, however, only deepened the mystery, for inside the vehicle, authorities found AJ's wallet, containing his identification and cash, his cell phone, and his keys, all of his essential personal belongings, seemingly untouched and left behind, a crucial detail that strongly suggested he had not left voluntarily, as it is highly improbable that someone intending to leave their life behind would abandon all means of identification, communication, and financial resources. The complete and total lack of any motive for AJ to leave his life, coupled with the discovery of his abandoned car containing all his personal effects, presented a profound challenge for investigators, as there were no signs of a struggle, no blood, no forced entry into the vehicle, and no evidence of any foul play at the scene where the truck was found, leading to a perplexing absence of any tangible clues that could point towards either a voluntary disappearance or an abduction. The initial search efforts were extensive, involving law enforcement, K-9 units, and hundreds of volunteers, meticulously combing the rural areas surrounding where his truck was found. But despite the monumental effort, no trace of AJ Bro, nor any further clues as to what transpired after he left the gas station, was ever discovered, leaving his family in a perpetual state of agonizing uncertainty, forever wondering what happened to the man who simply drove away from a gas station and vanished into thin air. The case of AJ Bro remains an open wound for his family and a source of enduring fascination for those who study missing persons cases. A chilling reminder of how a seemingly ordinary life can be interrupted for no reason, how a person can disappear from the most mundane of circumstances, leaving behind only the haunting CCTV footage of a normal man on a normal day, and the profound unanswered question of what happened to the man who left his life at the gas station, never to be seen or heard from again. The baffling disappearance of 27-year-old Brian Schaffer, a promising second-year medical student at Ohio State University, on the night of Friday, March 31st, 2006, from a popular Columbus bar known as the Ugly Tuna Saloona, remains one of the most perplexing and widely publicized missing persons cases in modern history. A seemingly impossible vanishing act from a crowded, surveilled establishment that has defied all logical explanation and left behind a chilling void, baffling investigators and his family for nearly 2 decades, as if he simply walked through a wall and ceased to exist. Brian, a bright, ambitious, and well-liked young man with a clear future ahead of him, had gone out with his friend William Clint Florence to celebrate the beginning of spring break, a typical Friday night outing for college students, and there was absolutely no indication of any personal distress, financial troubles, or mental health issues that would suggest a voluntary disappearance, making his sudden vanishing all the more inexplicable and heartbreaking for his father, Randy Schaffer, and his girlfriend, Alexis Wagoner, who were both integral parts of his close-knit life. The narrative of Brian's last known movements is meticulously documented by the bar's security cameras. Yet it is precisely this extensive surveillance that creates the core of the impossible crime mystery. For while the cameras clearly show him entering the bar, they provide no visual record of him ever leaving, a paradox that has haunted the investigation and fueled endless speculation. Brian and Clint arrived at the Ugly Tuna Saloona, located on the second floor of a building in the Arena District, a bustling entertainment area, shortly after 9 post-meridian, and the evening progressed as any typical night out, with the two friends socializing, drinking, and moving between different areas of the bar, all captured in various camera angles, confirming their presence and interactions within the establishment. At approximately 1:55 post-meridian, in the early hours of Saturday, April 1st, Brian was last seen on security footage talking to 2 young women near the bar's entrance, and he then told Clint that he was going outside for a moment, presumably to meet someone, or to step out for some fresh air, a mundane decision that would mark his final appearance on any surveillance camera, as he walked away from Clint and towards the main exit, a path that, according to all available footage, he never completed, creating the central enigma of his disappearance. The crucial and utterly baffling piece of evidence is the complete lack of any CCTV footage showing Brian exiting the Ugly Tuna Saloona through its only known public exit, which was monitored by a camera. Despite extensive and repeated reviews of all available surveillance tapes, Brian Schaffer is simply not seen leaving the bar, as if he vanished into thin air between the moment he was last seen inside and the point where he should have appeared on the exterior camera, a phenomenon that has led to the "man who never left the bar" moniker. This glaring absence of an exit record, coupled with the fact that no other known public exits existed from the second-floor establishment, immediately raised profound questions and led to several competing theories, each attempting to reconcile the impossible reality of his vanishing. One prominent theory suggests that Brian may have used a previously unknown or unmonitored service exit, perhaps a fire escape, a maintenance door, or a construction-related egress that was not under surveillance at the time, allowing him to slip out of the bar unseen. A possibility that, while plausible, still begs the question of why he would use such an unconventional exit and where he would have gone afterward, especially without his wallet, phone, or keys, all of which were later found at his apartment. Another theory, one that has gained considerable traction due to the mysterious circumstances, posits foul play, suggesting that Brian may have been abducted or met with an accident inside the bar, and his body was then removed through a service exit or concealed within the building itself. A grim possibility that aligns with the complete lack of any external trace and the sudden, inexplicable nature of his disappearance, especially given the involvement of a mysterious woman he was seen talking to. The police investigation, which included extensive searches of the bar, the surrounding area, and the nearby Olentangy River, yielded no significant clues, no body, and no definitive answers, leaving his family in a perpetual state of agonizing uncertainty, forever haunted by the image of Brian entering the bar, but never leaving, a ghost in the machine of surveillance. The case of Brian Schaffer remains an enduring mystery, a chilling testament to how a person can simply disappear from a public place under the watchful eye of cameras, leaving behind only an unsettling silence, a profound absence, and the agonizing question of what truly happened to the man who walked into a bar and never walked out, a vanishing act that continues to defy all logic and reason. Final somber reflection. Unlike movies, these stories don't have an ending. For the families of the 15 people we've discussed, the search for answers is a life sentence. These are the cases that time forgot, but by sharing their stories, we ensure they are not forgotten. What are your thoughts on the video? Drop a comment down below, and remember to like and subscribe as it really helps with the channel and growth of the community. Until next time, thanks for watching.